Okay, so I'm so proud today to announce, as everybody knows, I have my wonderful book on audacious women, of which Maryse Aulagnon, who will be speaking, is part of that book. I have three audacious women who are leaders, of which two I have worked with, and I've had the great pleasure of seeing, after I wrote that book, I realized that the women today are very well respected. So I have in front of me three wonderful women that are highly respected in their profession. So Ella-Etienne Denoy has a company that's called Green Soluce, which is enabling private and public organizations to move their business towards increased sustainability. Maryse Aulagnon, who was the first woman to create a company quoted in the stock market in France, and today has created a new company called Finestate, which is based on co-living. And Tania Bontemps, who I've known for many years and who navigates between Germany, Spain, and France, and has been an investor. I was surprised when I was looking at your union. She's a CEO of Union Investment in France, and I was surprised when it says that you've been there for 15 years. I remember when you entered that profession. So it's been a pretty good challenge. And so today we're talking because I think a lot of things have changed. In fact, today I was at Levallois. I drove in front of Levallois, and a brand new building that was maybe 30 years old was being destroyed to be turned into residential. So it was a big project. It was maybe 20,000 square meters, and it was, for me, a little bit of a shock. So a lot of things are changing now for being social responsible. And Ella, basically Green Soluce has 4 hubs of expertise. It has advisory, learning, and sustainable finance. So I guess maybe, and also Ella is a specialist in smart buildings associations for smart cities. And there was an event on Singapore, which is a smart city. And she's a young leader at ULI, and she is predominant in many areas. So Ella, would you like to explain what is sustainability and what does it mean, real estate, social investment, after this COVID? Are we going to start tearing down the office buildings and make residential buildings? So it was I swear to God, it was, I saw it today. Yeah.
Okay, so many questions in one, Janicka. Thanks so much for inviting me to this video conference. I'm delighted to be here and to bring some insights into sustainable real estate. As you mentioned, we drive change at Green Soluce towards more sustainability, and our key focus is on real estate and cities. And one of our hubs is about sustainable finance for real assets. And so I can tell you a little bit more about the trends in that field. I've got a few slides that I'd like to share with you today and with the audience. Just give me 1 minute. This should work. Okay, let me know when you see the slides.
We don't see them yet. I'm here.
Okay, you should be able to see. Okay, I don't know if you see the slides, but one of the first interesting points to have in mind with regards to sustainable, responsible real estate investment is to look forward to the future, to 2030, to 2040, to 2050. You know, where are we heading with real estate? And the interesting thing to note is, you know, our conference today is about real estate future-proof. And, you know, what are the key underlying trends that we're looking at for real estate in the 20, 30 years to come? And you know, there are key underlying trends that you know, that affect real estate valuation and this overall sustainability of assets. Those trends are climate change for one, demographic growth and urbanization, you know, throughout Europe and mature markets, but overall across the globe. Water, air, and soil pollution. Increased resource scarcity and waste production, poverty, growing inequalities in districts and cities, and a key driver, which is digitalization. So basically, you know, this smart building, smart city topic. And within the real estate ecosystem, I believe that, you know, the digital trend and goes together with the green trend. And these are, you know, smart and green are two topics that need to be combined, and that's also one of our key topics of interest at Green Soluce, but also at the SBA, where I'm one of the board members and the vice chair for Smart City. Obviously, when you look at these, you want to
try to show your slides, Ella? Do you want to try to see if you could show that slide again?
Yep.
I want to see if the two slides.
Do you see?
Okay, we don't see that.
Yep. Do you see the next?
No, I don't. But I don't know. Tania, can you see it? Because I can't see Ella's screen. Can you see something?
We can see Ella's screen. Yes.
Yeah, you have the picture of Ella on the screen, but you can't see Ella's slides. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, maybe we can have Tania interact with that. And Maryse, so Tania, as one of the major investors in Europe, Union Investment, what do you feel is the strategy now today for social responsibility investments? Do you agree with what Ella is talking about?
Should I start?
Yes, go ahead, Maryse, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, Janicka, you said that we have to face a lot of changes today. This is for sure. And if we try to see which are the main changes for real estate, I would say it's new uses of the buildings. This is a change which is intensifying today. It started like 5 years ago with the co-working. And the second change that we need to address is the need for solidarity and avoid people to be alone, isolated in big urban cities. Solidarity is not only isolation, but it's also providing places to live. And this is probably the main challenge that we have faced. And this challenge has been sort of colored by the confinement due to the COVID. All this is inducing today a lot of interrogation of what should be the city, how should be the buildings inside the city, and how should we live inside these buildings. And as far as I'm concerned, I consider that co-living is a proper answer.
Well, you know, it's pretty amazing because you had spent over 25 years of your career with industrial buildings. And 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I think it must have been something close to your heart about co-living. And today, with what we just went through with the COVID, I really understand co-living. And so I would like to understand, maybe if you could just add a couple of minutes of you, because you've started your first project, but now it makes so much sense. So that building that I saw 30 minutes ago that was being torn down at Le Valois, that was an office building, should be actually a co-living. That you should have won the piece of land to do co-living, because we really do need this co-living, as you had mentioned.
You're right. Well, I'm happy that I could win not a piece of land for the moment, so I'm negotiating on one, but I could win 3 buildings, office buildings, totally obsolete, which I did not choose to tear down, but to strong renovation, in order to turn them into environmental building and turn them into residence. Residence, according co-living as Finestate understands it, is not very far from apartments. The main difference is that you have some services. You have 24 hours access, you have weekly cleaning and laundry, but you have at least 20% of the surfaces of the building dedicated to community activities. And in fact, it's even more, as all our buildings have a garden and a terrace on the rooftop. So it's much more. And this idea was, I started to work on this idea 3 years ago. And it appears that if we had more buildings like this during the COVID, it would have been probably easier for a lot of people. And so I am also adapting my initial concept. We always had a co-working space in the building, but now the co-working space has been, we have added a small meeting room for visio, like the one we have, so that you can be isolated and be on a visio. We have a larger working space. People in our building can live in the sort of cluster, not in a sanitary way, but they can be in their building, work in their building. They can be provided services from outside. They have a garden, they have a terrace, and they are not isolated. So I really think this is the proper answer today.
It's the total answer, but did you think that this was going to happen, this COVID, and did you think your building was going to be so well adapted to the situation?
No, I don't, of course I didn't know that this COVID could happen, but I've been working a lot on the building offices, as you know, and I have realized that the frontiers that we usually have between the asset classes are no more frontiers. You don't have a frontier for co-working between hospitality and offices. And then when you want to work from a distance, work at home, then you don't have a frontier between home, workplace, and hospitality. So all this is getting very diffused. And when I realized that, I thought that I wanted to start a new adventure. And that's why
you definitely picked the right one. And Tania, we see you. So you have lots of office buildings. And I have one of your office buildings. I live in Bois Colombes, so you're in Bois Colombes. So how do you feel about the new transition? What are your thoughts about the COVID and about all of these office buildings?
Well, as you know, we are a quite big player also now for over 20 years in the French market. And what we could see before the coronavirus, there were already some trends, arising. And as Maryse explained, we are looking more for diversity, for reversibility of the spaces. We want to have mixed urban spaces, not only offices on one side and residential on the other one. We want mixed urban areas. So this is something that existed before, and now with the coronavirus, I would say that the trends have been confirmed or even reinforced in different directions, sometimes in the positive way, sometimes in the negative way. So there will be a very strong gap, I think, between different types of asset classes, which will be rising after the COVID, and some which will be suffering after the COVID, unfortunately. So offices is a good question. Everybody were having a big part of the portfolio invested in offices. Now we see that people are changing their minds. They want to work remotely. They want to have a lot of autonomy. And when they go and come to the office, it's because they want to have a social contact, collaborative areas. They as you said, Maryse, they want some green space. and all these issues they existed before, but they are just really strong now, and it's the expectation is there, and now we need to deal with that. And I see it with current tenants which we are negotiating with. The ESG is on the top of the issues, and they want healthy environments, green environments, and they want to have a performant. Also, they want to work in a performant building. They are really aware now of climate changes, of energy waste, and that's all the answers that we need to give as a landlord now. To provide an environment that is adequate and that fits really with today's users' expectations. So this is something we have been working for a long time, of course, as an institutional investor and a fund manager. But I would say that we will need to focus even more in the future when we build new projects, when we design new products, also office products. We will need to take into account all these new issues, and I would say criteria that are arising post-COVID. So I think this goes into the good direction, because it doesn't make any sense, I would say, just to build thousands of square meters of offices, without any sense and purpose. I think that including these ESG criteria and sustainable issues into our projects and into our acquisition processes, this makes a lot of sense, and that's where we want to go, because what we want is to be there still in 5 and 10 years and provide solutions and products that fit to our actual and current social and economical environment, of course.
Yes. Well, it was very good because you spent around 10 years with the residential. Tania was, she was a digital person and internet. She went to residential buildings, of which I had sold a couple of them, and then
that's true.
It's so all of this experience. That's what I love about real estate. It's so global. So Ella, what do you do to advise companies? Are you actually advising main institutional investors on this different change in investment?
Yes, absolutely. We advise investors and all real estate players along the value chain, investors and users, and what Maryse and Tania were mentioning about the new expectations of users, whether we're talking about new users of buildings, but also expectations with regards to sustainability in terms of environmental responsibility, and also what real estate companies are doing with regards to social inclusion, ESG, and environmental, social, and governance. Those criteria are more and more important. And to bounce back on what Tania was mentioning about ESG criteria, results are already there. The figures speak for themselves in terms of sustainable investment. I've got a few figures that I'd like to share with you today. When you look at the resilience that sustainable investments demonstrate, for instance, there's one figure that's quite interesting, the growth for sustainable funds. So green or socially responsible since June 2019, and despite the COVID-19, reached nearly 800 funds, and we're talking about 315 billion outstandings, and that's one of the latest studies on the topic, plus 70% of growth. That's very interesting with regards to sustainable funds for investors, and making sustainable real estate worthwhile. So it's interesting from an economic perspective, from a sustainable fund, to invest in environmentally and socially responsible real estate. So taking into account ESG criteria. It's also better for competitivity at an overall scale, and also interesting in terms of rent increase, because if you look at the low interest rates that we're having currently, investments going more and more towards real assets, real estate and infrastructure, which brings the value of real estate up, not necessarily the best in terms of rent, and taking into account increasingly ESG criteria is also a way to bring added value to real estate rents. So that those underlying trends and expectations with regards to ESG translate today in terms of the figures for sustainable funds.
So today I would like maybe we have another 5 minutes that maybe each one of you, because you've had all three of you, you've had a long experience in the real estate industry. I really believe what had happened with the COVID was extremely unfortunate, but nevertheless, it made us rethink our whole social living. We will be giving a conference in a couple of hours. The unemployment of women will drop almost 2%, so it's very disastrous. Women are suffering very much during this crisis. And I think there is even an idea of doing some, an area, as you said, Maryse, with the social area. I think there is even going to have to be some type of schooling inside certain buildings to accommodate the children to get together, to learn together. Homeschooling is now very, very popular in America. France was opposed to it. And today you had basically 100% of all families were homeschooling their children. So this is an important thing to consider, because our whole society will be affected. And unfortunately, there is a thought that this type of virus may continue on for the next 10 years. So knowing that, what would you, maybe if you could speak about what you're looking for as investors, how do you see your new investments for Maryse and Tania? And Ella, what type of strategies are you working with? I imagine you're working with architects and developers alongside to change their total vision, as I mentioned. And I'm still in shock because that building was only 20 years old at Levallois, and Levallois now is going for 12,000 euros a square meter. So, it's getting pretty wild. The real estate isn't dropping in residential. I don't know what's happening with the office, but I was just trying to calculated how much did that building actually cost to tear it down, because it must have been at least 15,000 square meters. But nevertheless, Maryse, how do you see, what type of investments are you looking for? How big? You're going to be one of the, you were the one, perhaps once again, one of the first women doing co-living in France. And how do you see, what areas are you looking to go to, and what is the ideal size for your investment? And will you be going abroad to different countries?
There are a lot of co-living, different types, different concepts, and our concept fits more with big cities and rather capitals. So we are looking for investing in France, in Paris. We are also starting to look in other European main cities, Brussels. And what is leading us is how can people live in our buildings? And one of the very, very important criteria, if not the first one, not in importance, but the first one we consider when looking at a new project that is proposed to us is, where is the public transportation? So if we don't have a metro line very close, we just don't go. So that's the first criteria. Second criteria, then we go through the analysis and we check whether this building, usually it is office building or small hotels also that are proposed to us. Can they fit with our concept? Our concept is we have autonomous studios with their own kitchenette, their own bathroom, and there is room, apart from these studios, there is room for community areas, for a garden and for a rooftop. So these are the criteria. And the last criteria that I'm looking for, and this is coming from what you have just said, is I don't want my building to be destroyed within 20 years. I think it can be, it can evolve, it can be adaptable, but I want a strong building that can survive all the changes that will come. And maybe in 20 years we redo the building, but it should be for more than 20 years. It's a shame to tear off a building after 20 years. That is showing that it was not from a good conception at the start. So buildings should be able to transform over the period. Yeah, I said that to start.
And Tania, how about you?
Well, I would say that I see the future investing more in mixed-use assets, and where we find, I would say, the mixity, the diversity, and the inclusivity that we are looking for. And as an example, also we have an office building in Lille, and we just let the ground floor to school, and we are really happy because actually when you rent to a school, then you it's for students, of course, you have also the impression that you do something positive, you know, for the society. And on the same time, it's a thing that apports a lot of I would say life and new dynamism to the whole office building, which is I would say sometimes a little bit more monotonous and with lack of diversity. I would say also that the example from our buildings, for example, in Paris, like the Trocadero, it's like a small city, you know, where you have residential, you have services, you have retail, you have a kindergarten, creche. So this is for me I would say the model that I would see for the future, where you mix up different type of people and population, and finally you can find everything inside this asset. So it's close to the transport, and now we are actually taking away a lot of parking places to replace them for bike sheds. So it's a mixed building that actually corresponds to what we would like to do in the future. And for me, it's a trendsetter. So kind of example we would like to set up for future acquisitions.
I was selling that building only 25 years ago or more, and I remember it was 50,000 square meters. So, as you said, it's a big city.
City.
It is a big city, and it is beautiful, and it was the most prestigious, and I guess that was some right way to go. So, Ella, thank you all. And Ella, maybe you want to resume everything with your knowledge of how you see these tendencies changing, and mostly because you're dealing with social responsibility, how investing, and as both Maryse and Tania had mentioned, that social responsibility, I really believe, will be led by women investors. And in fact, it was Ella who found me the great title, because it's the next wave, and the women are leading that for making better. And I think now we have to have the government change all of these regulations for the buildings, because you can't just have office, you need to have this mixed.
And there's definitely a regulation push, but what's interesting too is that push is coming from investors. And I think that's a key trend to have with regards to sustainability. And at Green Soluce, we help investors define their sustainability and corporate social responsibility strategies for real estate. You know, what is a COVID-ready building? What is a green building? What is a digital-ready building? How do you define that in terms of a strategy, an investment strategy, in order to have co-living down the line at asset level? So that's an important point. The fact that it's driven also by investor demand, and we're helping financial investors define what that means. But also at asset level, you know, working on energy, carbon, resources in a circular economy approach, biodiversity, and getting all those topics together rather than tackling them in an isolated manner. It's what's the vision you want for your asset, and how do you tackle these topics in a environmentally and socially responsible way? Because at the end of the day, it's about what your asset is offering, and is it offering true resilience from a sustainability perspective and from a social perspective. And I'd just like to end, Janicka, with one important point. I believe that it also comes down to raising awareness and working with the occupier, making the occupier understand, you know, what we were talking about co-living. You know, co-living is a different way of living in a building. A mixed office is also a different way of considering office space. It's more of a even a place of living than just a place of work. So, you know, all of those topics need raising awareness today, and we're also tackling that challenge, getting everybody on board within the industry. And, you know, it's that mass scale that we need to do this.
I think this is a great think tank to develop. I am sure that the women who have, as yourself, Maryse and Tania, already changed a lot in the investment world, will give, I think that's one of the most important things that people realize with the residential and the offices, is that women are making the choice. And as Tania had mentioned, there's a lot of these ecosystems that can create an environment for everyone to work in and to live in and to play in. So with that, I wish you all well. Thank you so much. This was a fabulous. I love internet. I love internet and the digital world, because we're all safe and we're all available to talk about the next wave of investment strategies with 3 women leading the ways. Maryse Aulagnon, CEO of Finestate; Tania Bontemps, CEO of Union Investment in France; and Ella-Etienne, who is the CEO of her company, which is an advisory of, go ahead, Ella.
Yep, Green Soluce.
Green Soluce, I got it, Green Soluce. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful day and stay safe. And let's make some great buildings. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.